What is the meaning of life? Are we alone in the universe? Do margaritas make you gay? What happens when you shove your cock in a blender? For generations, people have been pondering about these questions, but none of them are as complex and divisive as this one. Who has it harder, men or women? Men. Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. Men have clear physical advantage over women. Higher bone density, thicker skin, more muscle mass, bigger dick. I know this may come off controversial these days, but in hand-to-hand combat, an average man will dominate an average woman. So it's no surprise that when these two have a physical altercation, the man usually emerges victorious. Of course, there can be some exceptions, but those are statistically irrelevant. Now imagine it's 1600s, you're married to some alcoholic who gets drunk every day and confuses you with a punching bag. This is what many women had to deal with back in the day. Luckily, the situation is far better nowadays, because if you try testing your left hook on your partner, you might end up in jail, where a sweaty fat man will try testing his meat on your meat holster.
Oh my!
So, were women historically oppressed by men? Well, they were forced to stay home, cook, clean, take care of the children for free, while those selfish assholes were out there having fun. Women weren't allowed to vote up until 100 years ago, although up until couple hundred years ago most countries were ruled by monarchs, so I guess no one was allowed to vote at all. Now, despite the popular belief, I'm not a complete asshole, so I will not try to disregard all the suffering women went throughout history. For most of the time, they were considered as property, they didn't have much choices in life, they weren't allowed to make any major decisions, which is messed up, but the world was generally messed up back then. They had famines, disease, constant wars, the average lifespan was 35 years, so it's not that women were oppressed by men, it was more like people being oppressed by other people, nature and environment. I know it's easy for us to sit in our comfort, call out our ancestors on what they did wrong, but I think it would be fair to say that none of us have any clue how hard it was to live in those times, so we should all collectively
Shut the fuck up!
In the modern world, women tend to have somewhat equal rights as men. For the record, I'm talking about developed Western countries. In many Middle Eastern countries, women still have as much rights as a bag of potatoes. But even now, there are many problems that girls have to deal with. One of the most outspoken issues happens to be the gender pay gap, a study which shows that on average a woman earns less than a man, which in theory sounds outrageous and unfair. I mean, it must be the patriarchy and those pesky males who keep oppressing women. But when you put aside the emotions and look at the facts, turns out that gender pay gap is mostly due to differences in career choice, education, experience and working hours. To put it simply, if you want to earn as much as this guy, you'll have to do the same job and work as hard as he does. Sounds fair to me. Now, I don't deny the possibility of gender-based workplace bias, but considering that gender discrimination is illegal, I'm pretty sure it isn't as big of an issue as many claim it to be. I could be wrong though, I'm not an expert. Another problem women constantly have to deal with is unattainable beauty standards. Seeing all these perfectly thin models everywhere, that must be frustrating for an average woman. And I can sympathize with that. Women are judged based on their appearance a lot more than men, but I would argue that it's mostly a self-inflicted wound. You see, the biggest critics of female beauty are actually other females. On one side, you have the beauty industry mostly owned and monetized by a bunch of wealthy chicks that use plastic surgery and simple editing to make women feel less of themselves. Then from the other side, we have jealous body positive chicks who claim that anyone who tries to get in shape is fatphobic and you can be healthy even if you look like a walrus. Ladies, it's great that you're trying to improve your appearance, but don't compare yourselves to them. Their entire persona is an artificially crafted illusion which was made to sell you crap that you probably don't need. Just be yourselves and love yourselves, but not in a douchey way. And dear large people, if you really believe that it's possible to be healthy at every size, then search for a 60-year-old morbidly obese person. Spoiler alert, you won't find anyone. I rest my case. What's funny to me is that when men see someone more jacked than them, they mostly show admiration and respect, but when these ladies see someone thinner than them, they lose their shit. Now, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention that women have to deal with specific kinds of harassments from certain representatives of the opposite sex. Then there's the menstruation, difficulty of childbirth, and of course the issue of reproductive rights, a legitimate dilemma that is way too complex for me to address in this video. The last major issue for women is being underrepresented in leadership and positions of power. This one's my favorite. Do you really think that your life will somehow be better if the president of your country has the same genitals as you? Really? Let me tell you a little secret. It doesn't matter who you have in charge, a man, a woman, or a fucking unicorn. They'll do their job just good enough to maintain the status quo and use their position for their own personal gains, because at the end of the day, the only thing we all care about is ourselves. Of course, there are good leaders and there are bad leaders, but the quality of their leadership isn't determined by their gender. It just so happens that there are far more men in those positions than women, probably because many women are wise enough to choose having family and actually enjoying their lives over spending 18 hours a day in the office chasing some superficial numbers. You have to understand that just because most powerful people in the world happen to be men, it doesn't automatically mean that the world is made for men. No, just for a tiny proportion of them. Just like you ladies, most of us get the short end of the stick. In fact, and this might seem hard to believe, being a man has its disadvantages too. First of all, men have shorter life expectancy than women. I don't know why, probably because most of the dangerous jobs are done by men, plus we do all kind of stupid crap like reckless driving, fighting, drinking, slapping the shit out of each other just for fun. Yeah, it sounds paradoxical, but men are simultaneously smarter and dumber than women. Sometimes we have to deal with batshit crazy chicks who will key your car, shit in your bed and destroy your career. You can ask this guy if you don't believe me. Men are viewed by society as expendable, cause apparently we can take shit. If a man punches a woman, that's an assault. If a woman punches a man, that's a comedy. If a woman says all men suck, that's an opinion. If a man says all women suck, that's a chauvinism. If you're too assertive, you're called toxic. If you're not assertive enough, you're called pussy. If a man is emotionally vulnerable, he's judged and ridiculed. That's why men tend not to share their feelings with others and suppress their emotions. Hence, higher level of depression and worse mental health. You add to that some extra testosterone and you'll end up with men being the majority of prison population. The modern education just doesn't work for most men. The divorce courts usually work against men. We're expected to serve in military, we're expected to earn, provide and protect, and if you're not doing the things that society expects from you, then you should quit being a loser and man the fuck up. But don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, because men aren't allowed to complain. So we're good, we're fine, we're okay. Now obviously my take on this whole issue is biased because I happen to be a dude. I know more how it feels to be a man, but it doesn't mean I can't sympathize with women. The problems that we have might be different, but we all have them. Some men's lives are easier than others, some women's lives are harder than others. At the end of the day, we're all in this shit together and we're far more alike than different. So don't buy into this stupid divisive man versus women narrative. Be nice to each other regardless of what you got between your legs, okay? Cool. Bye-bye.